Okay. For people joining this live stream, we are talking about image and video functionality for 12.1. Okay, starting off $image resolution. Why is that a well-defined thing? What actually is it?
This is to tackle the high DPI.
I mean, it also isn't working here.
It's okay. There were a lot of conflicts in the past week. We are working on sorting through all of the conflicts. It's possible some things are not in the builds, but it should be documented in CBS. This is to tackle the high DPI displays and rasterization. In order to have an image resolution correctly working on different resolution displays, we are updating rasterize to a good extent, and I think this is going to be a good addition to all of that to query for the resolution that is current on the screen.
What does it mean, though? I mean, so rasterize would take something. Okay, so you're going to explain where is the new stuff in rasterize?
There's nothing new in the page. We are finding a lot of bugs as well, or behaviors that needs to be corrected or better be corrected. But the general idea is that you're creating a graphics of a disk, and it displays as large as you see it on a screen. On a high DPI, it ends up using twice as many pixels in both directions to display it as big as it is. So if you rasterize it, you presumably want it to be the new image dimensions rather than the old image dimensions.
Hold on. Are you saying rasterize is going to generate files that are 4 times bigger on high DPI? I mean, to generate expressions that are 4 times bigger.
Yeah, well, that's what it's using on the monitor, and it would be otherwise. It would, if you rasterize an expression on a smaller resolution, using a smaller resolution, it's gonna all of a sudden look smaller as well. So it's not gonna look like what you're seeing on the screen.
Well,
so it would be
hold
correct.
on. That's because our image object doesn't record the information on what the DPI is, right? Because it could perfectly well, resample itself. I mean, image has an image. Well, actually, I'm now confused. Image has an image size, right?
Correct. It also has an image resolution.
Okay, what does the image resolution mean?
So if you have a 144 by 144 pixel image, and it's a 72 DPI screen, it obviously the size of it, the display size of it, is going to be half the size of if twice as large that it's being displayed on a 144 DPI screen.
I understand. But so you're saying, but if I set image size is a number of pixels, right?
No, that's the display size.
No,
raster size. For rasterize, we also have the raster size option.
Okay, but
image size is just a display size.
I know that, but it's a display size in units of pixels.
In printer's points. So that's basically raster size and image resolution combined.
By the way, your audio keeps on dropping out in a kind of annoying way, Shadi. If we could fix that, it'd be good. But I mean, it's an electronic dropout. It's not an audio dropout. Okay, so let me understand this then. So, image size purports to be an absolute size on the screen. So you're telling me, if I say, graphics of disk, image size arrow, 72 times 5. Okay, you're telling me that if I took out a ruler, which I will now do, and put it on my screen, which you will not be able to see because that's not the way screen sharing works in current times, except I don't seem to have a ruler because it's not. Oh, I do have a ruler. Look at that. It's right at the back of my collection of stuff here. Okay. Let me get that out and measure it on my screen. Hold on 1 second. No, it's about 4.2 inches across. So what happened here? And also my notebook is magnified by 125%. So magnification, clearly it doesn't care about that for image size, right?
No.
Okay,
If you put it back at 100, then is that going to be roughly 2.5? No. That's still larger, probably.
It's about 3.2 inches. Okay, so what's going on? That's because of faking of DPIs, is that correct?
I think so. This is the combination of 3 is also, I don't know. It's still very confusing.
Okay, it's very confusing. This isn't right. And also, as someone is pointing out on our live stream, the term resolution, which has become used for monitors, is of course not the original optical meaning of resolution. Okay, so let's just understand what rasterize wants to do now. So rasterize should take, I mean, if I give an expression, I mean, let's just understand the contract of rasterize, okay? So I reckon what its contract should be is if I take an expression and it would be rendered with a certain number of pixels in a notebook right now, then rasterize should have the same number of pixels in it, okay? But let me give you an immediate counterexample to that theory, okay? Let's imagine that I have the notebook at 200%. It is the case that if I say style of, capital A, I don't know, 50 or something here, 100, that will render that character at much higher resolution than, you see what I'm saying?
Than under 100%.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I don't know what happens here. Does the same thing happen for, Roger, maybe you can say something. If I do this, and I were to look microscopically, this thing is actually rendering at the 200% resolution, correct? It's got...
because you have 200%. I'm not entirely sure. I believe so. I mean, I hope so.
Okay, well, we can determine that for sure. So let's do the following thing. Let's say, okay, so let's take that and we could screen capture that, just the little tippy tip there. We could paste that in. Oh gosh, we've still got that bug. Unbelievable. Still got that bug. Can we make sure that gets re-reported yet again? This thing about losing focus, I thought John said he'd fixed that for... do you understand the bug? Is somebody, Elizabeth is here, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the bug you understand is that if I do screen capture here and I try to paste into the same notebook, the paste just doesn't work.
Yes.
I have to paste into a different notebook and then paste it back into this notebook and then it works fine. Okay, so now if I go in here and I look at that tippy tip, right, see what I see, okay? Now, let's go down. I'm going to demonstrate a bit of a horror here because if I go down here to 100%, I recompute. This is a hypothesis. I'm not even sure it's correct, but I recompute that. Now, if I magnify this, is it re-rendering? It is re-rendering, isn't it? Yeah, it is re-rendering as I change the size.
Right.
But this is all vector graphics.
I'm sorry?
But this is still all vector graphics.
I understand that. But the question of what resolution, when you say rasterize, at what resolution should it rasterize? That's what this is addressing.
Maybe take this simpler example of rasterizing X plus Y.
Yeah.
Because then I think for something like that, you're going to see the blurriness or the difference between high DPI rasterization and low DPI.
Well, okay, so you're saying if I say rasterize and then I just say something like hello here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that is at, okay, so that's at 100% and that's a big mess. Okay, so
Right.
let's try, I claim this is not going to affect it. If I go to 200% and I redo
Right.
that rasterization, nothing will change, right?
Correct.
Even though well, actually, it turns out we're wrong. Maybe we're not wrong.
No, I think they're the same.
Yeah, they're the same.
Rasterize computes this bounding box size or estimates.
Okay. But the point I'm making is at 200%, the font, if I were to type it in the notebook, the as if notebook test fails because that font is rendered at a higher resolution than it is at 100%.
Right.
Sure.
So let's understand what the rules, I mean, we need to write down what the rules actually are. So the thing is going to a notebook at 100% magnification on the screen that you are currently on, true or not true?
I think you're right, but we were never taking into account magnification so far.
No, I understand,
I'm not
but
sure for rasterizing into graphics to raster, we want to consider that.
no, I don't think we do.
But just for comparison, do a rasterize with image resolution set to 144 for that hello example. And then don't magnify. Just do a pure comparison between the two.
Okay. Now what do you want me to do?
Well, just compare that with, this is...
I know.
This is what we are aiming to get by default on high DPI. That's the minimal change that is necessary to at least try to get a raster that is similar to
Let me show you a typical demo that's slow, and maybe we can speed this up. If I do this, okay, that is really a bit abominably slow. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
Do you know why? Maybe there's a startup problem with rasterize.
I don't. Rasterize is split between kernel and front end, and we are coordinating with John for the front end part of it. We just very recently took custody for looking into the kernel part of rasterize, and this update is the first update we're making it.
All right, okay. So I'm going to tell you, I think you should check on why that's slow.
Sure.
Okay, because there may be some startup time that could be saved there.
Okay.
Okay, but so I'm trying to understand here. The results that you will get for the kernel function rasterize depend on the resolution of the screen that you happen to be running on.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
So if I have two monitors, one is a 4K monitor, one's not a 4K monitor, and I were to run this in the kernel, which screen will it pick?
I would expect the one the notebook is in, but I don't...
Okay, but assume there is no notebook. Assume that I'm running this in a, well, I mean, now let me play the cloud evaluate case. Now we play the Wolfram script case.
Well, I guess in that case, currently our default is 72. I guess we could keep it as that, or we could say the world has moved on to a higher DPI, and we could just change the default.
I think we should consider changing the default to 144.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think we should explore that possibility. If it doesn't know anything, that's what we do.
Right.
And it's honestly, I'm a little bit scared about it thinking it knows something and just getting it wrong.
And honestly, I think the other scary part might be that we are going to be getting different size rasters depending on the platform and screen, as you said. And I don't know what workflows are going to be broken or become difficult with that change. But if you are sitting at one monitor...
Hold on a second. Right now, we get the same, or do we do not get the same?
It's a fixed 72. So regardless of...
We do not want to mess with that. We do not want to mess with it. We do not want to make it depend on what screen you happen to be sitting at.
But then should we just change the default to 144?
That's what I think, yes.
Period?
I think we should ask around to see what people think. I know that's going to affect the Wolfram Alpha stuff. It's going to affect a bunch of things. Right?
I would feel more comfortable with that setting as well, yes.
Okay. All right. So then
we are still debating some cases with John, because I think there are more cases that are happening. Rasterization is happening for the front end workflows. I think he knows more about those. When it comes to us, it's mostly rasterizing graphics for working with some image, which we have some image dimensions for, that they should match.
But then I think it should be documented to be 144 and not automatic. And then the automatic could be used to adapt to your screen.
That's fine. I think that's reasonable. Okay, so there are various comments on the live stream here that are interesting. Brian is asking, is there a method for setting the DPI or screen resolution of a notebook so all subsequent graphics primitives use that value instead of the screen characteristics? This would enable making frames for videos. I don't think you should rely on unless you're doing a screen capture from your screen. I think in terms of making videos, I think you should be using one of these internal rasterization things that is not based on what you happen to see on the screen. So this image resolution thing, I don't really believe in it, because it's like asking, what's your screen size? See what I'm saying?
I see. I do.
I think it's just a mess. I mean, like, I have 3 monitors and they have different resolutions. What are you going to say? I mean, we've got that, for example, if I look at what am I trying to look at? I want to look at system information here, presumably. If I ask for, oh, great, it just crashed. Okay, something to report. Product build. I typed system information and it crashed. Got it, Elizabeth?
Got it.
Thank you. It's now crashing repeatedly. So hold on, let me just, I'm just going to try, so I understand. What am I typing? System information. I'm just doing this in the current shipping version, just to make my point. Devices. Okay, so it's pretty complicated. There's our map. I've got 2 screens. Screen 1, screen 2, blah blah blah. It's complicated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just saying there's a resolution, I don't think really cuts it.
Right. Potentially we can think about having a default rasterization resolution or something like that, as Brian was saying on the live stream.
Yeah.
So $1 default resolution.
I think that's a good idea, but I mean that is, what is that? That's
parent.
I mean, okay, so what is the setting in rasterize that determines its image resolution for rasterize, right?
Correct. We have a combination of the 3 options, right? Image size, raster size, image resolution. The 3 of them.
What else is image resolution used for?
I believe it's also an option for graphics, right? Which just stays in there until
it's for export.
Oh, you're right.
So, I mean, it would be natural for $image resolution to be the default image resolution to use, the default setting for image resolution.
Okay.
Right? Which is not saying, it's not making any claim about what the actual physical hardware you're using has or anything like that. It's just, the default image resolution. And that does seem to me to make sense, and I think would satisfy what Brian is looking for here. And by the way, Sander is pointing out that rasterize should be sped up a lot. He's right. It's really, really, really slow. And I really think you should have somebody look at that, because I think that could help a lot of things if we could really speed that up. And I don't know exactly why it's slow. Okay. All right. So I think then $image resolution is not going to go, and the default for rasterize, so the default we're going to set is image resolution arrow 144. And you're going to check how that affects people. And automatic for a notebook could be made to be the resolution that would be on the screen that would be rendered with that. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
I'm not totally certain we want that, but I think, and unfortunately, in terms of existing code, that could lead to weird behavior. I mean, it's possible.
I totally agree. Yeah, we'll have to check a lot of things before that goes.
It's possible that what we should do is leave automatic to be 72 and de-document it for now and expect that in time that will change.
I see. Okay. So the old default is going to stay, or the old setting, explicit setting of automatic behaves like before. But you want correct. That to stay the default as well, or default to 144? Okay.
I think it should change to 144.
Okay.
Okay, Roger, remind me, in graph, property value is being updated to be what now?
Annotation value, I think.
Okay. And the property wrapper itself is being updated to be what?
Annotation.
Okay. So what is annotation rules here in image?
That's the option that we...
It contains all of them.
Yeah, that's the option for audio. We introduced it in 12. So we're adding to image.
Okay, that was the thing that we agreed would be the general mechanism for all of this stuff is annotation rules, correct?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. Okay, so image annotate is doing the name value kind of thing.
Correct.
Is there a graph annotate, or how does that work, Roger?
No, you use... no, these are special just because it's not entirely clear yet, but we think that these are there because we think that they're convenient ways to automatically do it using some of the measurement and other things, measurement functions.
Things like the things in that future step, cell, faces, contents, barcode, and so forth. So we'll have named annotations that are.
So I'm saying image measurements and audio measurements.
I understand. Right. So the name, but so how will that work in this design?
Look at audio annotate. Image annotate is going to mimic that. There are going to be there is a arbitrary function case where where the spec could be any function f, like audio measurements, image measurements, as Roger is saying. But there are also going to be a few named ones like audible, inaudible in audio annotate, and probably a list of those for image annotate.
Yeah, I understand. Prop include, but where are the properties being put in? I don't see that in this documentation.
That's the miss. Oh no, that's the second argument as a whole. See the first usage: audio annotate, audio, prop.
Okay, but but that's not what you're documenting there. But so if I were to say something like, I'm going to try and type in this version because otherwise I'm going to hit the autocomplete bug.
For images, another important thing, and possibly for audio too, but for image, to interactively annotate is not unimportant at all. And so I think
what does that mean?
It means that you bring up an editor where you can annotate the image. Like
okay, yeah, I understand.
So that will come in those attached,
right.
the attached cell eventually.
Yeah, so for
Right.
instance, we're going to be able to say image annotate, image comma faces.
By the way, is that something known to that to Noah, who's working on attached cells for editing and so on? Probably worth pointing it out.
Okay.
Okay, so then if you say this, then what should come back? Is that then the facial features of image, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
I guess that's up for discussion. It could just annotate a bunch of rectangles with the name faces or face, which is no properties, or we could have properties. And I think, I don't know. I don't have a good proposal. We do have this arbitrary function where you can say whether you just want find faces or you want facial features with a whole bunch of properties. Or we could introduce a whole bunch of named ones that says how much detail you want to annotate for each of the detections.
Right. I think you're going to want named things because I think people are going to want. Well, I'm not sure. Okay. Let me just
I just don't want to get into the situation that we have faces with ages, faces with gender, faces with emotion, faces with ages and gender. It's just going to become endless set of settings that we want to have.
Okay. Let's.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Let's skip ahead here a little bit. So, image annotation lookup. What is that going to do?
It's gonna find annotations that are stored in the image, but in addition to that, we have a formatter where we can say apply something to each of the discovered annotations and then reduce them to something. For instance, get the total, the count.
I don't understand why this isn't a more generic annotation lookup, which applies to all objects with annotation rules.
I think eventually we can make it a general lookup function, but we're not certain it's going to work for all the objects that are going to contain annotations down the road. So it might be safer to just introduce, we do have audio annotation lookup. Maybe let's try with this as well as a separate function if we think it's safe, and we don't have any graph annotation lookup yet. But if we play with that and we think we can merge them, I think it would be fine to have an annotation lookup function eventually.
Okay. But now what were you saying about what to do with the annotations? So you're saying here, I get an annotation.
We have a dummy example as the first example. This is just a constant image with 2 disks saved as annotations.
Okay.
Named foo. So you can ask for all of them. You can ask for foo, where you get the list of 2 regions with some values. Then you can format each one of those annotations with that formatter function.
Which formatter function?
The slot region ampersand is the formatter. It acts very similarly like group by at this point.
Like what?
Like group by, the function group by.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you format everything that comes back, and then the third argument is a reducer function. So you say, I get all of the regions. I can region measure all of those regions and then total them.
I get it. That's kind of nice. I'm not sure I would guess that you could do that from. Okay.
A lookup function.
Okay, we got a couple of points on the live stream here I want to respond to. Brian is saying there should be a variable that contains the current screen resolution and what automatic would select. Yeah, the current screen resolution is available from current image, right? A current value, right? Current value of screen rectangle, I think. Why isn't that auto-completing? That is very suspicious. Okay, issue for Elizabeth, that should auto-complete. The current value.
Yep, got it.
And it should autocomplete, but that's my screen resolution. Screen, and I don't know whether there's a current. I don't even know what that means. I don't know what. I guess that's the screen I'm currently on. Okay. I don't know how this works, but that's a yeah. There we go. There it is. Right.
And those are that resolution is fake, presumably. I think that's the old problem that OSs didn't properly track it.
I don't know if it's fake. I mean,
I'm
that's a
sure
question.
it's fake.
Okay. Well,
I've asked this repeatedly, and it's always come back to turn out to be fake because Microsoft didn't properly transition, and I'm not sure Apple did either. So, in other words, you can't trust them.
Let's find out, and let's see whether there's a different current value that we could have for, physical screen resolution, for example, would be a possible name for it. If there is, if there's a difference there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. Let's do a quick scan down the other things you have here, because we're clearly not going to get through everything. And I know, Roger, you and I have 2 more design reviews stacked back to back here.
So I want to say that, first of all, that radial basis nonlinear transform, that should have been moved out. So that's more an open-ended discussion for...
What roughly is it?
It's the question, first of all, well, the nonlinear transformation function is whether we should have a system-wide container that we can start building up and fill out. So it's more discussion-oriented, what should live in such a thing and what services it would do. It's not, I don't feel it's finished to the point.
So in other words, this is kind of the analog of interpolating function, but for some kind of transformation type thing?
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean...
But we are not entirely sure what properties it should have and the scope of it. So that's why I'm saying it feels not...
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Okay, by the way, Ben on the live stream is asking, is there a target release date for 12.1? Will it be ready ahead of the technology conference? We hope it will be ready around that time. A good solid beta, but there's already a beta program that's already started up. I'm not at the front lines of that. Ali is asking, can users use the mask creation toolbar to annotate arbitrary regions in an image? I believe that's the intent, right?
That's the idea, yes.
How will that work? What will the interface be between the UI of annotating with the mask and the named annotation? In other words, will that UI provide the possibility for you to enter a name, for example?
So we haven't built it yet. We've built various prototypes, and sometimes you want cross marks that targets the center of cells or something like that. Sometimes you want rectangle. You want to capture the shape of something. Mm-hmm. So I think we got to go down the path of what all those, obvious cases are.
Okay. I recommend that you interact with that Noah lad who's working on the graphics toolbar, because I think,
of course,
he has good things to say about this. Okay, let's take a quick look at video because I'm excited by that.
Okay, so just to dampen your excitement a little bit, unfortunately, our conclusion is that we cannot ship this in 12.1, except in a limited way. And the reason is we cannot ship a video player that's anyway that anybody could be happy with. And that's
what about for external? I mean, what about if you just view the video externally?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, you're saying an in-notebook video player.
Right, but that means that we can't have an object video. Okay.
Well, unless the object video...
That messes up the whole workflow. If we can't have that...
well, wait a second. We have a sound object or an audio object, mm-hmm. which has a play button in it, mm-hmm. but it doesn't... you could still carry around the audio object without being able to play it right in place. It's kind of disappointing, but you could certainly carry it around without being able to play it. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing I point out, you could, as a hack, play it in a separate window. I mean, I admit that's kind of like 30 years ago, but still, it is a possible thing to do, if I'm not mistaken.
The thing is that we believe we are going to be able to have an in-notebook player once front end has support for library link, and we can just read frames through library link in the front end to play.
Okay, well, look, to me, it is not 100% obvious. I mean, it's very cool to be able to have an in-notebook on desktop video player. Okay. However, I still think video manipulation, absent that, with the video being played either in a pop-up or in a separate
So it will be
application.
either way, it will be very limited video manipulation in this release.
Mm-hmm.
So the big bulk of it is import-export stack. That's a huge set of work there.
Yeah, well, that's
Okay.
important. I mean,
Right.
but like, for example, being able to take a manipulator and animate and,
But that's not there. That's what I'm saying. That kind of thing will not, unlikely to be there. Probably won't.
Okay. But okay, how about a list of images?
Yes.
For export,
Yeah.
that will be that will be supported. That's
Yes.
already supported.
Okay, so right now, the only thing we can do is an animated GIF, right?
No,
If I try to export
in prototype builds, you can import all of those formats that are listed under import export and export to them. Well, it's prototype, so there may be some things failing.
Okay, but so among the other things that I might want to do is export a list of images, list of image frames to an MP4, for example. And you're
Correct.
saying that as of now, that now works.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And I can do that even without the video wrapper.
Definitely.
Okay. Okay. So video filter, apply a function to partitions of video and audio data. Okay, so what is that? Is that a space-time filter, so to speak, or what is that? The video filter thing.
Video filter, the way it's not fully baked, but the way we have seen it is that you can specify separate filters for video or audio track, and it could be a single frame filtering, or it could take multiple image frames and then a buffer of the audio and then process.
Right, but so to me, the kind of thing that will be exciting with video is saying, annotate which frames had a tiger in them. Show me the time series. Video comes in. What comes out is the time series of tiger appearances in the video.
Right.
Okay, so which function here would be able to do that?
I guess video block map is going to be the thing that could do that, because video filter is supposed to be video in, video out. Something like video block map is going to be video in, measurements out.
Okay. So if I say video block map of something, but I mean, really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a true or false, is there a tiger, or maybe how many tigers is it?
Right. This is the thing I pasted in chat, is one version 12 product example that we put together, which is using image contains queue to say whether a dog is in each frame. So that's the time series version. That's the highlighted version. So this basically says that's the time in the video, and you can play the video. You just click on that first frame that is shown on top of the marketing page. This was already a slow-mo.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But as you see, we are in this example, we're reading frame by frame from the video and then running image instance queue. What you're saying is that, what I'm saying is that video block map is going to be the thing that is going to be able to take image instance queue as a function that gets run on every frame. Or it could be a series of frames from the video object and then return.
Well, I mean, I think the obvious thing is a video map that just computes for every frame in the video something, but a very common thing, and I don't know how this works with audio either, is the interplay between the time series mechanism and and what you're observing in the video or the audio. Because I mean, this is kind of messy, right? I mean, the fact you've got to do a list plot with a bool and weird nonsense like that, right?
Well, image contains Q returns a true false. So we had to do that. Yeah. No,
Okay, so
I
fair
see
enough.
what
So
you're saying.
fair
All of
point.
that
So,
is going to be cleaner.
right, but I mean, ultimately, that will be a time series whose values are true and false, probably.
Right.
Which who knows whether that happens, gets handled well or not.
Or could be anything else. It could be some mean intensity, or it could be some position of the dog, which I think we have as well further down in this example, and so forth. But you're right. We see that red line is a time series of position of the image, what image position finds as the center position of that dog.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, the typical type of thing that somebody's going to want. Okay, so we've got image position. I kind of think people are going to want video position, just like okay, let me speculate. Just like we've got image cases, image position, image count. What is the analog of that for a video? Does each
Maybe
of those
video,
go time
video
series?
position. Video, yeah, maybe. There are, as you said, there is the spatial domain that we should think about, and then there is the temporal domain of video. So a whole bunch things like audio interval. The analog of that is going to be video interval.
I understand, but I mean, so to me, there are two things you might want returned. Like probably more so. I mean, like in an audio, for example, you might say, I don't know, in some situation, was there a gunshot in this audio type thing? How many were there, right? And it's just like for the whole audio. But you also might want to know, what were the positions of, how often did I cough during that meeting or something? Give me those times. Boy, another piece of personal analytics. It'd be kind of interesting to track how one's, I'm just getting over a cough. It'd be interesting to track how that goes as a function of time. Anyway, separate problem. What am I trying to say? I'm saying that in that case, what you would want is the kind of video. Let's see. I mean, that is essentially a video time series. Instead of video position, right? You're asking for essentially video time series, where you're saying, image position gives you a bounding box and so on in an image, right?
Correct.
So I'm claiming the analog of that is video time series, which gives you a time series of something. It's a little obscure because there isn't really a coordinate. I mean, the coordinate is time in the video, correct? I mean, it's time relative to the beginning of the video. And I assume that we have a way of saying the absolute moment, this video occurred on January 1st, 2021 or something.
There's something stored in the metadata. And yes, time originating the starting time is one of those.
Okay, so the default would just be relative to the beginning of the video. Just like, what do we do with audio for absolute times of audio? Do we have that mechanism there as well?
There's also creation date and time, but no, we have never come across any application that wanted to make use of absolute time of some audio recording.
I think that would be useful to have. I think it would be quite useful. I can imagine all kinds of applications, particularly with video, where people care about, security videos and stuff like this.
But there's a question of how it's stored. Is it something there is that piece in metadata, and I think that metadata can exist for audio as well.
Right.
Okay.
There's been also, I think GoPro had proposed this extended EXIF type metadata that stores a lot of things, including, say, GPS location per time for a video that is taken.
I see.
On a GoPro camera.
What is the typical EXIF for a video? Is there one?
Yeah. It's still the general metadata, the general EXIF for video that is stored as a whole is very similar to the audio, the image ones.
But how can it be? Because I mean, like if you have a zoom lens and you're zooming in and out, how can the focal length be fixed?
Again, as I said, there are not that many devices that store properties of that sort over time. There's been proposals. I think the GoPro one is the only one that I've seen well documented, not that I've dived into it yet fully.
All right. But anyway, to me, we should be looking at things like video time series that are the analog of video, image position. More so, I think things like video filter, video block map are lower level constructs.
Okay. I guess the idea behind video block map is very similar to what you're calling video time series.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's got some function. Let's see. There are questions on this live stream, by the way. We should point out for people interested in the pre-release program that if you are an official user, you can request access to the pre-release program through tech support. Okay, Brian is asking what video formats will be supported by the in-notebook player. I assume all reasonable formats once we have an in-notebook player. Is that correct?
As far as containers, the ones that are listed on the notebook, MP4, Matroshka, OGG, QuickTime, AVI are going to be documented formats. There are more containers that are as well going to be supported, but they are less popular. So for the time being, we're just documenting them on their video format. And then the dollar variables listed at the end of this section, dollar video decoders, video encoders, are going to be all the supported decoder encoders on the platform that the Mathematica is running.
Okay, but so the issue, I mean, don't these things have boatloads of different codecs and so on?
Yes.
How do we get
call up one of them?
What's that?
Call up dollar video encoders.
In where? In the prototype build?
Yeah, if you have a prototype build running.
Let's see if it crashes. Video encoders?
Yep. So those are the ones that we can write or export to.
Okay.
And so for each one of those containers that are here presented as keys, like AVI, there are a whole bunch of codecs that we can use to create AVIs. And this is the supported list. So the first in each list is the codec, the second part of
By the way, should we consider using entities to represent all this stuff? Rather than just these, are these strings or are these like random, what the heck are these things?
No, these are strings. As I said, the pairs are names and descriptions. Which I'm not sure, in fact, we need the descriptions. Perhaps just the names would be sufficient, but...
well, if we have them as entities, then you could always query for the description.
Let me think what kind of properties might be interesting other than the description. If we have anything useful to store, but like, does anyone care when they were proposed, developed, who's the maintainer and things like that? Those are really the main type of things.
Harmless to have that in there. I mean, it gives you, if you're trying to date a video and you know that this format didn't exist until such and such a time, it might help you.
Okay.
But, okay, so will there be an optimized path for transcoding videos?
I think we have one. I mean, there will be naturally one called file convert, which in the way we build it here, that can be optimized. It obviously doesn't pull it into the kernel and things like that.
Right.
Correct. That's going to be the first out of core file converter that we're going to
So Brian says it'd be cool to use System Modeler to create an audio or video pipeline using drag and drop.
Completely agree.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen
not
soon.
Not that technology, but the general technology of having drag and drop interfaces we are exploring in several different directions.
Sure.
Let's see. Ali is saying, I'm more interested in tracking multiple items in a video, such as moving cells. Yes, so giving the indices of the frames where the objects were present.
Mm-hmm.
How can we offload the image or video processing or object detection to a GPU or TPU? hopefully we will be doing that, right? Hopefully our for example, our neural network image detection stuff, object detection stuff will automatically do that. Is that a true statement?
Yes, but I'm not sure how fast it's gonna be for video. If you're sending frame by frame stuff to GPU, the overhead at that point might already be very high.
Well, I mean, so that raises the question, which is, I think, not an immediate question of whether we can sort of, whether we can essentially pipeline the sending of large streams of video to a GPU. I don't know
Correct.
how that works at this
I
point.
don't
I mean,
know.
clearly people have solved that problem. I mean, that is a standard NVIDIA demo of today, so to speak.
Right.
Is a video stream, and I don't know how that feeds into the GPU and how it sort of streams through the registers of the GPU and so on. Okay, so Ali is saying the index of a frame plus the bounding box should be sufficient to specify where something is. The index of the frame is temporal, bounding box is spatial. So in a sense, what you're saying is, I mean, one could imagine a video position in which, I mean, in a 3D image, right, we're already giving voxel positions with 3 coordinates, correct?
Yes.
So the issue here, and this reminds me a little bit of the GeoPath story, where we have been giving positions, on the and I mean somehow this has to dovetail with that. We've been given a position on the Earth, but now we can have some position that moves with time, right? So similarly here, in a sense, what you need is some kind of video position which contains both the we can even plan for the future and imagine 3D videos plus time, so to speak.
I still think the immediate storage for us is going to be a time series with a single XY or a rectangle or anything else stored in it for the times that we have data of interest.
Well, so what you're saying is it's time on the outside.
Yes.
And then it's whatever it would be, whatever the return value from image position for the single frame would be, that is the thing, or whether it's image position or something else.
Correct.
So this, in a sense, what you're describing is a sort of video map time series or something, which takes some function that is to be applied to every frame and returns the time series of the result of doing that. I mean, or perhaps you want the same thing frame by frame. I don't really know. I mean, the frames, is it the case that most videos that one sees in the wild these days, I should know this, are they 60 frames a second, or what are they?
A lot of 60 frames per second is coming. Now, what is the fraction out there in the market? There's been a lot of lower frames.
Well, what is it right now? What is the typical frame rate? 15 or something, or what is it?
No, it's 25 or 30.
Okay,
30,
I don't know. I've lost track of this. Sorry, I don't look up the frame rates for these things.
No, but I mean the standard movie formats, they come in, they're 30 frames a second.
Right. Okay. I guess I've heard of that. Yes, I should have.
Yeah,
heard
but
of that
I really think the new standard is becoming 60.
Okay, fine. But anyway, so there's a meaningful, the number of frames in a video is certainly, if we returned a result frame by frame as a list, that would not be a totally crazy thing to do. Like, in other words, if we returned the position of fishes in the image, and we return that frame by frame, right, and we simply return a list of the fish positions for every image, then we should be able to use, now it's a little bit tricky because imagine that case, okay? We've got a list of fish positions. There were 5 fishes, and then one of them swam out of the frame, and then another thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what we would have is a list of, differing numbers of bounding box information, differing amounts of bounding box information. And that's not a format that we readily deal with in, for example, any of our list plot stuff and so on. In other words, it's a slightly complicated thing, right? If we have variable numbers of objects as a function of time, many of our other functions don't readily deal with that.
None of them.
Well,
And the other thing is that for audio, when we return a time series, we assume times are absolute or relative times to the beginning of audio. It may end up being more accurate, more correct to have a frame number as the indicator or the timestamp rather than the time itself, because we
No,
really
I
don't want
get
to
it.
have an offset. Yep.
Right, I get it. And particularly when you're mapping the video and the audio together.
Correct.
But I mean, so this is a separate sort of higher order issue, is we're going to end up returning things that are variable length. We're going to have a time series that is a different kind of time series than we've had before. It's a kind of a I don't know, a time features series or something, where at every time there's a list of things that are
I think
have
if
been
you don't want to
extracted.
do anything with a time series, that's not a problem.
I agree.
So,
Problem
so
is,
really, I think that's what should have been the definition of it. That's a different discussion, but that's what should have been the definition of event series. Should be no operations done. It's just a point in time that matters. The other things are basically properties or annotations. In which case,
that's a different thing, but it's still we need a whole gaggle of functions that, for example, take my example of the fishes. Okay.
yeah, but you cannot, the algebra of operating on that. As I said, for time series, it's assumed to be a vector space, and that's what all filters, everything assumes that you can do. If it's not a vector space, you have no operation. So,
look, Roger, even plotting where the fishes were.
Yeah, but the other big advantage of time series is that you can operate on them if things work. And if you can't operate, you can't even define operations.
Right. So Ali on our live stream is suggesting using dataset. I mean, this whole business about tracking objects. Yeah, I mean, Ethan is saying tracking multiple deforming objects through occlusion is supported better in MATLAB at the moment. Yeah, I have no idea what. I mean, the question is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the question is. What is the output, right? Because you've got a bunch of fish swimming around, and if we could take the fish named Jane and the fish named John, and we could identify this, the life story of this particular fish. I mean, that would be an example of something very useful to get out. That is. The sort of the not inverse, the some kind of pivot on the, so one thing is frame by frame what fish were in the frame and where were they. Thing number two, given a fish, where was it, in what frames did it exist? The transpose, effectively. Right? So given an object, and I mean, that is certainly something, I mean, to me, that would be a very useful thing for many purposes. Given, generate a report. In this video, what objects did you see and when and where did you see them? Right? Which is a different thing from saying, in this video, tell me what happened frame by frame. Now, what's the analog of that? I mean, the analog of that is probably, given, for example, with faces, given an image, tell me what faces are in it. And then we do not currently have, because we haven't yet had to worry about, for example, faces as a function of time. We haven't had to, okay, what I mean is we don't have essentially face-centered, to make a silly pun, versions of analyzing a video or an image. Right? What we have is image-centered. It's given the image what faces were in the image, not given this face, what images was this face in. That makes sense?
Right. I mean, that relates to another thing too, to work with image collections, because there's a lot of things that don't necessarily put out video, but put out big image collections. They just.
Right. And what's the relationship between what we're doing here and what we're planning with the whole, the MongoDB store stuff that we've been using internally for a long time for dealing with things like large image collections? Have you explored that?
Not for video, I guess. a large image collection, I don't see it storing a video. I think a video storage should be a separate thing of its own, a separate type of data store.
Well, the only thing is that I can imagine a situation in which you want to sort of explode a video into a large collection of frames.
Sure.
In which case you are going to want some kind of, put it out into something like this MongoDB store. I don't know whether the inverse of taking the MongoDB store and making an image out of it is of interest. I mean, that's like I have that for my crazy personal analytics of screen capture my screen every whatever it is, 15 seconds or something. That can be assembled into an unbelievably boring video. And I suppose that's going from individual frames to a video. But I think that's an uncommon case. Sandra is commenting that tracking is a complicated thing by itself. Absolutely. But that's exactly why we would love to have a super function that does a reasonable job of tracking. Yes, you need the pose, the orientation, right, of the object. And, yes, you could need all kinds of, but I mean, the ultimate thing that would be super cool, for example, is there's a whole cluster of functionality here. I mean, so for example, deriving the angle path representation of the fish, for example. In other words, what was the, given this object, it was swimming around and it made certain intrinsic movements in the video, represented in terms of those intrinsic movements. We don't have that. We don't have that mechanism right now. I mean, given a walk, so to speak, representing it in terms of moves made intrinsically in the walk, we don't have. I mean, this is a whole new world of stuff to analyze. I know you know that.
Yep.
Okay. I think we should switch. In about 30 minutes, we're going to a discussion about biomolecules that we can't be late for. So we have two choices, Roger. We could either continue with this for the next half hour and move the calculus and algebra to a different time, or we could take a quick look at calculus and algebra.
I think we continue with this and move calculus and algebra.
Okay, fine. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, then let's take a quick look ahead here. Okay. Now supports, what is large wave files? Is this, you mean just like big, like hundreds of megabytes or something?
Gigs, I think.
Okay.
Or megs, right?
Okay, SSML. What do you feed? I mean, unlike notes and things for sound notes where you can give styling information, what is the analogous? So we already talked about a little bit. If I want to say,
so speaking style is the analog.
Right, but so what is the rich text version? If I say I am very upset or whatever.
So I think that we found there's one more. This is it. This is what there's one more except for SSML. What was that, Shoddy?
No, but I'm asking, what is that symbolic representation of tagged speech?
So that would be speaking style, nested speaking styles.
Okay, so in other words, if I want to tag my speech, so I just want to see consistency in several things, okay? So, we have this notion of text elements, right? That's what, if I were to do a, let's say, for example, I want to go, there's a good example. If I want to take that sentence there and I say text structure of that sentence, right? I'm trying to show the different forms of textual annotation because we've got several things running around, and I think we need to make sure that they are consistent. Okay, so here's this. So now if we look at the input form of this, so notice the way that this is displayed, which already is interesting, because you can imagine something in which you're displayed voice styling thing actually has a little underline that says, emphasized or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at the input form here, this is a bunch of nested text elements.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, what is the relationship between, is it self-evident that we should not use text elements with different property annotations to represent these speaking styles? Because this is already a thing that can be wrapped inside.
For speaking styles, yeah. Well, would things like pause, or I see that some qualifiers, like this is a word, sentence, paragraph, is shared between speaking styles and text.
Yeah, I may be wrong, but I think design-wise, okay, so we've got several of these things. We've also got the way the XML wrappers work. And what does text cases do? Text cases has a way of returning something which is a pre-annotated, which is an annotated thing, right? And similarly, let me just understand something. So audio, it has annotation rules, and those are kind of dead reckoning annotation rules. Is that correct? As in, they go in, they go in and they say, for this position to this position, do this. Is that right? They're not.
They don't say do something. They have some information.
I understand.
Okay.
But what they're not wound inside the audio, right? They're from the outside. They're saying at this position of the audio, this is the annotation, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Whereas text element is sort of entwining itself into the innards of the object.
Right.
Right. So my question here,
I think that this is the problem with both image, video, and audio. You cannot
entwine.
You can't entwine it.
Well, certainly with a two-dimensional thing, entwining would become very difficult. Okay, so what is the highlighted snippet? How does that work? Let's see. So if I were to do this, and I were to say arrow, and by the way, this is another missing autocomplete, and that is for Elizabeth again.
Okay.
Oh, hopefully it's still here. Okay, look at that curious object. Now, what is that? That's just bonkers. What the heck is that?
That's exactly.
This is
just a very raw typeset form.
Exactly.
I don't even know what it means here. I don't know what it's done here. Okay, this is a complaint for Elizabeth needs to take to Jerome and Etienne. Because I don't know what this is. Okay, but that's got the same type of issue that we have in the speaking style thing, I claim. Because, for example, it's got to be easy to take something with styling, speaking styling, and just get rid of the styling. It's also got to be easy to take something which doesn't have styling and say every time you see the word, I don't know. I'm trying to think of some cute pop culture reference of every time you see such and such a word, sing it or something, right? But every time you see the word very, emphasize it or whatever else.
It might take more than this type of light coordination that you're trying to do now in order to get that level of uniformity.
I know. So we're probably going to need I think we're going to need a meeting to talk about text annotation and text and speaking annotation. Okay, so it's got to bring together audio, text cases, and voice synthesis, speech synthesis.
Okay.
I don't think this is going to be that horrifying, but I think we just need to get it right, and we may need converters to go from between different forms. All right, let's just take a quick look at your import-export story here. DICOM.
Now, this is a big deal.
Oh, I haven't had any CT scans, MRIs, anything like that for a while. But I'm sure I have some old data. So is it
Did
the
you
case
know
of,
that they have like 400 standard metadata properties? It's more a metadata story than it is an image story.
But is the metadata like this is the top of the kidney or something, or what?
What is it, Shadi? The details of the metadata. It's
I
workflows for radiologists.
Yeah, I
Right.
understand. I'm asking, how does it? Okay, so one question is, does it align with our anatomy data, for example? Is it anatomy specific? I mean, is part of that metadata specific to kidneys and hearts and spine discs and things, or is it
I haven't
generic?
seen a whole lot of that. You can annotate DICOM with generally graphics like disks and lines and circles, and then give it some coordinate systems. But I don't think I've seen so far. I wouldn't be surprised if there are samples out there that map an image, a DICOM image, to the human body, saying this is this.
Well, we know that's a hard problem. I mean, people have done that for very specific organs. They've done this kind of, is this a, and they do it for fetuses and things like that, I think.
Yeah. More than that, the thing we have seen, especially with DICOM deers, it's about patient, where the hospital was, when the study happened, if the study had been repeated, when and how many times, and what were the different.
Right, so it's a piece of EHR that's been stuffed into the DICOM,
right.
because the radiologists are worried that otherwise it's going to get lost.
Yeah, and then device information and things like that, obviously.
Okay, all right, fine. So it's not annotation of the DICOM content; it's meta annotation of
both.
It has both. It has overlays.
Both. You typically annotate, a segment and say, here is something, and then who did it and when.
Okay. All right, but I'm guessing, if I know how the world works enough, that the reason that stuff is right in the image is because the radiologists are rightly suspicious that people will lose the rest of the record.
Yeah, but I think that's generally the case. Like when the annotations get separated from the data, keeping them together is very hard.
Fair enough. Okay, but so what are we going to do? How much are we going to canonicalize? I mean, it's like XDiff canonicalization. How much are we going to try and canonicalize the content of the metadata for DICOM?
They're very obvious things like when and where and things like that can get mapped to dates, times, GPS locations, and so forth.
Cool.
It's also very flexible beyond the. I think 4,000 is it that is documented in the spec. One can store anything custom in there.
Fine. But I guess my question would be, are we actually going to try and align to some of our anatomical structures and things like that, or is that just not something that DICOM already deals with? I mean, the very interesting problem that people look at from time to time is, given a standardized human, can one actually find, given radiological imagery, can one align that to the standardized human, so to speak, and thereby deduce, if you've taken a thing of a hand or something, can you readily annotate every single bone in it and every whatever?
That's very interesting. I think the modalities are gonna be messy a little bit, whether it's an MR or a CT, and how we align with the kind of data that we have. But it would be very interesting to do
that's beyond the state of the art to be able to do that. I mean, that's something that one hopes to be able to do, and then we'll all know, everybody has all kinds of anatomical anomalies, right? Because the number of branches of this vein is never quite the same for everybody, and so on. And so everybody will be able to have kind of the symbolic version of their anatomical, features, so to speak, because the canonical human, like the one that we have in our anatomy data, has just standard, or whatever the standard thing is. Okay.
One big deal there for DICOM is also that you store for 3D scans and things. There's certain layout directory structure, which will now automatically recognize, and you will get them as volumes, etc.
What is HEIF?
That was the new image format that Apple first adopted. This is more compressed than JPEG with a higher quality. Apple adopted it. It's creating HEIFs since a couple of years ago. Windows adopted that. It's not yet as comprehensively
used.
What is it?
Do you know? Is it a wavelet-based thing, or was it something completely different? What's its compression methodology? Actually, I have 2 questions. How do you say the word, and what is its compression technology?
I think it's HEIF, and it's a very there are a lot of discussions whether it should be the format's name, whether it's HEIF or HEIC, HEIC, which is the codec itself. It's still a very confused format concept out there, but it's being adopted because, as I said, it's roughly half the size with better quality compared.
Okay, but how does it work? Do you know?
No.
Okay. RLE. Okay, that's good. I mean, at some point, and this is probably not for your team, but we should get somebody to do a proper import-export for all features of Golly, which includes macro cells for cellular automata.
It's based on DCT, discrete cosine transform.
Okay, same as all the other ones.
Yes.
Wow. How can there be How can there be a factor of 2 to be gotten out of DCT?
I don't know.
Okay, interesting. All right. Create archive. Okay. Okay. Yeah, by the way, Brian,
I think maybe it's because of image sequences that they get the higher efficiency. It's really aimed for image sequences.
I see. Okay, Brian is commenting, there should be a way to automatically convert from text, emphasis, and stress, e.g. caps, bold, italics, to prosody for speech synthesis. Yeah, it'd be a good function to have. I mean, I think generally, prosody rules to determine from a given piece of text, what the emphasis should be is an interesting thing. It's an interesting area to explore.
I think so too. I think that as of right now, the only synthesizers we have that can accept that are external. Remember we looked at that last time.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a downer for it. And they're all varying support for this. It's not particularly uniform, unfortunately.
We have some very interesting video synthesis applications coming in Wolfram Alpha, which we can talk about separately at some point, for which we will care about a lot of this stuff. Okay, question for Shadi from Ali here. Is there any idea of bringing virtual stack to Mathematica to view big microscopic images, similar to Fiji Image J? Okay, well, that's definitely not something I know. So does Shadi know the answer to that?
I don't know what he means by a virtual stack.
Okay, well, we should probably look up what Image J is. For example, even with limited RAM, one can open up quite large image stacks with virtual stacks. So it's some out-of-core processing mechanism.
We have thought about the out-of-core image processing for a while. It's just going to be a very huge project that was never justified whether we really need it or what percentage of our users are going to care for. Still, it doesn't seem like an individual image can go well beyond our storage space or RAM space. I know there are applications out there, but it seems like working with a collection of images is a more typical task that we should tackle as a next big project rather than trying to handle a single very big image. There are giga-size images out there, but really applications of them is still fairly limited.
Mathematical musings that handle notes that with all the time he or she spends watching these videos, they could have made their own Mathematica. Yeah, well, right. No, it takes much longer. Trust me. This is the ratio of time spent discussing features here to time spent implementing features is microscopic.
Oh yeah.
This could be my theory of building software. It's you specify it and then it's done. But anyway, okay. Okay, Ethan is saying that the way Hive, if that's pronounced correctly, works is encoding multiple layers of information as deeper image channels than JPEG at twice the compression. I see, interesting. And Ethan is also commenting that many people have what is its file extension?
Apple stores it as HEIC, HEIC.
Why haven't I seen this? Am I just clueless, or why wouldn't I have seen this at some point? Maybe it's because I read things into Wolfram language and then I just get them as images and then I don't see what the format was. Fair enough. But so when I'm dragging something from somewhere, like from the Photos app on the Mac, why isn't it dragging in this format if it was being taken in this format? How do I successfully...
Drag and drop usually offers a number of different formats, right?
I see. So
there's a protocol.
So then what's happening there? Because, if I drag and drop, it works, just dragging it into a notebook. But do you know what it's dragging it as or how that works?
It's the same format that it has stored it. If there is a setting on your phone that you can say whether you want to save things and then share things as high efficiency format or as JPEG.
Oh,
format.
I've seen this high efficiency thing. Yeah, okay, fair enough. That's the HE is high efficiency. Okay, now it makes some sense to me. Okay. Let's see. Brian is saying image stacking is also used in astronomy. Ethan is also encouraging us to look at this Fiji thing, which and Ali is saying that he plays with 200 gigabyte image stacks. And people in microscopy apparently view several gigabyte sized image stacks. Okay. And an image stack is presumably what, different depths or something, or what is that?
That's what I would guess. I don't know if that's the only use. They're also,
Okay. All right, let's just scan ahead here just for a moment. Association support. Okay. Oh, we're getting protobuf. Yeah, I know. Is protobuf coming out of your team or somewhere else, Shadi?
It's going to be coming out of our team. I told you on Thursday the priority at this point is to make sure protobuf needed for Onyx is bug free and as fast as it has to be. Whether the association support makes it into 12.1 or no, at this point, I don't think is that important. Because that was for multi-file formats, and Onyx is a single file format.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh, I see. The association for multi-file. Okay, so that gives the name of the file. So just so I understand, that association agrees with the file system scan association structure, correct?
No, that's different. This I'm not sure. Well, this association support is gonna say that I would like to import something that has piece of its information saved in one file and another piece of it in a different file.
I understand, but look at what file system map does. Okay, so file system map gives you right? So it's showing this payload for each of a succession of files, right? Named
Mhm.
files. Okay. And so what I'm understanding is that in your case, what you would be saying is import a collection of files. I see. What you're doing is you're saying this feature of the format is coming from this file, this feature of the format is coming from that file.
Exactly.
Is that right?
It's yes.
So it's kind of a transpose of what's going on here. Correct?
In a sense, yes.
But in a multi-file, I'm a little confused here. I mean, so
well, see, with protobufs, you specify a structure in one file, and the actual data given in that structure is in another file. That's the idea. Without one, the other one doesn't make sense and cannot be imported, say, into MXNet or something like that. So that's where you want to say my JSON is this file, my params is that file. Take the MXNet case.
right. Okay, fair enough. So it's not quite the same. I mean, we need to understand. We need to understand how that relates to file system map. It seems, because particularly when file system map is dealing with nested directories, it has all kinds of stuff going on here, right? So you see that directory structure represented in the association. So if we do have a directory, I guess we don't in this case, because what all you're saying in this case is it's this feature of the format is to be found in this file type.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, good.
I think you may care about what we have done with cellular automaton for RLE.
Okay.
We may want to have a separate quick meeting about that, but if you want to open RLE at this point, or maybe I can just explain. We are introducing a cellular automaton element to RLE that is giving an inactive cellular automaton because cellular automaton evaluates.
Ugh.
And I think what we care is we can access the rule number and the initial state separately as well.
I think that's a bad way to do it. I think we should bring back the association form of cellular automaton, which contains all of that information.
Okay, all right, that's
and then you should be able to. I think it can contain everything there. Hold on. Don't generate an inactivated cellular automaton function. I think that's a bad idea. And however, I think, if I remember correctly, that we set it up so that cellular automaton, and if it hasn't been done this way, it certainly could be done this way, has, let's see, rule specification by an association. So what it doesn't have probably is the initial condition.
Correct. No, I don't see that syntax. There is no association of the format rule goes to this, initial state goes to that.
Well, we should consider that probably. Okay, requires a separate meeting, because otherwise I'm not a big fan of bringing back it's actually kind of crazy, because you bring back a cellular automaton function with its two first arguments filled in and its third argument missing. And how do you add the third argument? And I don't think it curries that way either.
It doesn't.
Okay, so that's a bad idea. Okay. We have to go. For those interested in the live stream, we are about to have one about biomolecules, which includes some outside experts as well. Okay, so we're going to need to come back and look at this some more, Roger and Shadi, but clearly made some good progress here. Okay, and thank you to everybody. Thanks to folks on the live stream. Lots of good comments. All right, see you all soon.